Welcome back to another episode of Pushing Back Chaos with me, Paul Miller McFadden, over in the sunny Middle East. We've got our usual two idiots, Mike and Raph. How are you fellas?
I'll let the bigger idiot answer first. Go ahead, Mike.
Oh yeah, that's me. It's a good little Sunday morning here on the East Coast, and it's been a great weekend, if I'm being honest. There's my girlfriend and I just got back from church, so we had to push 30 minutes to the right because honestly I didn't want to miss it, and it's been really good just to be going the last couple of weeks and making it part of our routine, and then having some good conversations off of it. So it's been really nice. And actually the weekend kind of started off pretty well because it was a good week of training, but then Friday we had a 2-mile ocean swim, and it was kind of like the black cloud hanging over the end of the week. Like nobody wanted to talk about it, and everybody knew that it was just going to be this kick in the nuts. And it was, hey, what's that? Are you ready for tomorrow? What's happening tomorrow? Like everybody was just like, the demon child nobody want to talk about. But it was actually really good, man. And I texted Melon and Raph before it, and I was like, yeah, here we go, dude, we're getting in. And they're like, what's the water temp? And I was like, water temp is 44 degrees and the air temp was 30, and it was just about to start sprinkling some snowflakes. And wore my 5 mil wetsuit and got out there. And then no matter what you wear, man, as soon as you jump in, you get this ice cold jet of water down your back, and it's just misery. But it was about, 75 minutes to put out. And honestly, man, I got out and I just felt so focused. And honestly, I stood there on the beach. I was waiting for some of my other guys to get out and fist bump them and hell yeah. And, kind of a good feeling when something hard's done, right? It's always a good feeling once you're done with something. And I was just sitting there kind of watching the sun come up because it was like 7 a.m. And I just kind of got into a state of like gratefulness, to be honest with you. Like when I was younger and I was doing those swims and all that hard stuff, it was like, oh man, this is going to be for so long. I ain't got to worry about it. It just sucks and living in the moment. But now it's just like, dude, I'm on the end. I'm on the tail end of my career. I don't know how many more of these I'm going to do. And I know for damn sure I'm going to miss it one day. And also, too, it was just kind of like realizing where I was at in that moment, what I was doing and who I was doing it with was really special. And as soon as I finished up, I sent this picture. I was just like frozen, to Raph and Melon, just this shock face. And they're like, dude, how was it? This, that, whatever. And I just told them, honestly, guys, I was just kind of grateful for it, to be able to even do it, and it was just a good feeling, man. It kicked off a really good weekend. It's been a really nice weekend. Been spending it over here with my girlfriend and having good conversations and going to church. And I don't know, not bad for February, dude. It could be a lot worse.
Just for the people listening in the Southern Hemisphere, who might be like 40 degrees, that sounds beautiful. It's 40 Fahrenheit, 7 Celsius. And I think he was saying the air temp was below freezing. So that's a pretty good man test. Good for you to get through it and come out with such a, almost like having had a meditative experience, man, like to be able to come through it and think real positive thoughts. That's awesome.
You definitely have the choice of swimming in one direction along a beach for 75 minutes. And you're just sitting there like, what goes through your damn head for that long besides I'm cold, right? It's definitely a battle of will and everything. But honestly, man, I thought about this episode, what we were going to talk about, and I was playing stories back in my head. I was envisioning finishing. I was envisioning what I was going to do after. I thought about Raph and his stupid hat. Like all kinds of random stuff, man. For 75 minutes, you just zone out the best you can and try to get, try to find positives. It's a constant battle of will in that cold water. And literally you guys helped me through it in some really goofy ass ways, which I won't share. But it's what you got to do, man, to get through the hard,
That's a great intro, man. Go ahead, Rob.
You want to know how I know you're gay?
No, I don't
thinking about
really.
me for 75 minutes.
It was like 7.5 seconds. Then I was like, I want to move on to something else. I'm depressed.
Yeah. So
I will give you.
eagle-eyed viewers will have seen that there's a fourth person here. There's -4. The fourth wingman has joined the formation. Welcome, Brian Smitty Smith. How you going, mate?
Good. It's cold here in the Kansas City area.
So where are you right now, Smitty? I'm in Saudi. Raf's on. Are you on the West Coast? Are you at your parents' house, Raf?
Yeah, I am. I came in last night. A surprise visit, but that's well, you skipped me, so I'm not going to talk about it now. Go on, Smitty.
So just quickly say where we are. Like I'm in Saudi. Mike's on the East Coast. Raf's on the West Coast, and Smitty, you in Kansas City?
Yeah, I'm currently just outside of Leavenworth, Kansas, a few minutes from Kansas City area.
Awesome. So Smitty is a good mate of mine. He's a good mate of Raf's, and he's a really good mate of mine. We hooked up when Raf was over in Saudi, flying with the US Army, flying Black Hawks around, and he introduced me to a mate of his just as he was leaving. And Smitty and I just became super close mates as well. And Smitty would come out to our house, we'd have barbecues and sit up at night time playing cards and having a few refreshing beverages, shall we say. And then Smitty departed the fix back to the US of A, and he flew out to Australia. We had an unreal New Year's Eve. It was very memorable in Sydney.
Life-changing.
And I was lucky enough to be there when a big moment in his life occurred. And we've just stayed really close mates. We caught up last year in New Orleans. Smitty came down and stayed with Cherry's sister and our brother-in-law. And yeah, he's just like a great mate. And he's now in the enviable position of having transitioned through a career in the military. And now he's in post-military life, still flying helicopters and doing what he loves and really contributing back to the community as an air ambulance / rescue sort of role. So welcome aboard, Smitty. How you doing?
Thanks. Doing great. It's great to be here. I appreciate you guys having me on.
So Raf, maybe you could let us know how you met Smitty. Some early stories.
Yeah, so it was one of my last, well, it was second to my last assignment, which was in Saudi Arabia, which is where I met you, Melon. And it was, like you said, it was in the last 1/3 of my stay in Riyadh in Escon Village when Smitty showed up. And, Smitty was a unicorn because in the Apache world, there's not a lot of what they call maintenance evaluators, maintenance examiners. And he was one of the few, probably in the Army. And like, he just kind of randomly showed up. And I remember because they kept talking about like, this guy they're trying to bring in because there was a vacancy in your position for how long? Did they ever tell you? It was like,
from what I'm understanding, it's a couple of years, I think.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah, like 3 years or something. It's something crazy, like they can literally fill every position, Black Hawk maintenance guy, with spades or whatever. I mean, everything. But the Apache ME slot was vacant forever. I mean, it was like the ultimate ninja position. So in comes Smitty and everyone's like, oh, he's going to come in, he's going to crush him, blah, 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 blah. No, he was a ninja. He was just like me. We were, let's just say we were efficient at what we needed to get done at ESCON. And then we'd be, or, at Kaj Milan. And then, we'd be back at ESCON. But anyways, clearly we hit it off because we shared the same room in the offices, which is to say we saw each other for about 3 minutes. And then be like, hey, man,
email.
Yeah, got to check the email, dude. I know Mike is taking notes right now. Don't hate.
You better believe I am.
Yeah. Hey, for the record, and I want to set this straight, and this is true. When you're doing those foreign military sales type deals, your job isn't really to do all the technical, right? It's to establish relationships. That's what we did. We established relationships. We went over, we hung out, we talked to these generals or, foreign flight crew, and we gave them as much as they were willing to take. And Melon, you can talk about that later because I'm sure you're well read in on that. But anyway, so getting back to Smitty, so he totally kind of joined we kind of had like a little, I would say for the most part, our shop was pretty tight. Yeah, it was not cliquish, but there's people that hung out with other people. But thanks to General Muth, every Thursday, well, shit, like I feel like every night there was something going on at our lounge on the camp, and you would see the same faces over and over again. Like you had B Swole, Smitty, me. I mean, there's just the list goes on and on. Oh, Frank Winot, And yeah, we took a couple trips. So were you in the Bahrain trip with us? Like you went a couple places.
Yeah,
with us.
we went to I can't remember all the places. I know we went to UAE.
Yeah. Yeah.
We went to Petra
Right.
with old Angry Joe.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's some stories we're not going to tell on here, but it was a dumpster fire. It was a really good time. So yeah, we just became fast bros. And the running joke of all this is that, you know, because Smitty, like Smitty didn't actually go to your compound, Melon, until I left. And Smitty was like, dude, why are you trying to keep me from Melon? I'm like, what are you talking about? And he's like, how come you've never invited me? And the truth is I have invited. I think the one time I did it, schedules didn't work out. You might have been going somewhere. And I said, and then I just replied with, I didn't think it was your thing, you know, because I thought you were going to be going through your drinking rations versus hanging out in Annie and Michael McFadden's room, looking at Aussie, you know, posters of Australian Shepherd puppies and stars. But yeah, man, you found out just like I did. It's an oasis away from home, you know, like it was really, and I really mean this, like it was, to this day, it's one of the most special moments in my life because I was in a place where it's not that I didn't want to be there, but I was away from home, and just to be with the McFaddens, like just gave me a semblance of like peace. Like it was real peace, you know, and they immediately just made you feel at home, you know? And
Very fun, man.
Yeah. So anyways,
the great part about it too was, like you said, with the peace, is it was back to normal life. Getting out of Escon, getting over to Melon's compound, it was night and day.
Yeah.
The people you met, the people you hung out with. I mean, if I had the choice, I'd rather lived on Melon's compound and just commuted to Escon.
Yeah.
Well, it goes along with the saying, when, you know, you could be in some of the best places in the world with the worst people and you have a terrible time, and you be in the worst places with the best people and you have the best time, right? Melon's one of those multipliers. Raph, not so much. That'd be pretty miserable. But, you know, there'd be like gangbangers and all kinds of stuff in Raph's compound, and Cholo sales outside, and, you know, one button up top. Hey, man, what's going on? You want to come over? You know, Melon's more welcoming with food and drink. So I could see that.
Well, it was honestly, it was a great couple of years when we had you guys coming out pretty much every weekend. And I mean, we sort of transitioned when Tio rolled off back to the mainland, and then Smitty just started coming out. I mean, we were out, we had ourselves out there. We had a New Year's Eve out there one night.
Yep.
Cards Against Humanity and too many refreshments. I mean, just some great freaking memories, you know. And I remember, you know, you and I, well, you came up with your plan on how you were going to move forward with your then girlfriend, you know. And I mean, just some really good special conversations that we shared, you know, like good times. Speaking of. So Smitty, could you tell us a little bit about your backstory, like, you know, where you're from, where you grew up, and so like what your interests were as a young man, just so people can get a bit of an idea of your backstory?
Yeah, so I grew up in a small town in Virginia, Southwest Virginia. Went to high school, graduated. As soon as I graduated, I was 18. I went to college, community college, for a police science degree because I always wanted to be a police officer. And then when I graduated, I was only 20. I was still too young to be a police officer, but I was a volunteer fireman the whole time I was in college. And my fire chief also worked at a paid department, and he got me on over there. So I became a paid firefighter, loved it. I mean, I worked 11 days a month, full time. I mean, back then I was still such a small town. I was still living at home. So like making decent money for a 21-year-old kid living at home with a full-time job, only working 11 days a month. Did that. And how I got into the Army aviation, one night I was watching Discovery Channel. I'm sorry, guys, the dogs. I was watching the Discovery Channel with my captain, and it was about the Apache helicopter. And told him, I was like, you know, I always wanted to fly one of those. And I dabbled in fixed wing, Cessnas and stuff back then also. So didn't think anything of it. Went to bed, got up the next morning. We had a few calls that night. And was getting ready to head home at 6:30, and he asked, "What are you doing today?" Like, well, I'm going to go home, going to bed. He's like, "Well, someone wants to meet you." He's like, "Uh-oh, what did I do?" He's like, "The colonel of the base wants to meet you," because it was at an Army base that where we were contracted firefighters. Takes me up to the headquarters. Didn't tell me what it's about. The colonel pulls me in. And big shout out to this guy, Lieutenant Colonel retired Brian Butler. He owns his own company down in Tampa, Florida. So he's an extremely successful veteran. But he sits me down and he starts it off with, "I hear you want to fly." And this guy was a chemical officer, didn't know Army aviation at all. It's like, yeah, it's been an interest of mine. And he told me about the warrant officer program. Didn't know anything about it. So he sends me to a recruiter down in downtown, the city where we were at, and gives me his card with his private number written on the back and says, "If they give you any trouble, give them this." Okay. So I go to a recruiter, sit down, and I get the normal spiel, which I'm sure Raf's probably heard, but I know Raf, you were prior enlisted also. Of you have to be enlisted first. You can't go in as a warrant officer. You have to be a crew chief before you can be a pilot. And I was told that's not true. And this E6 is arguing with me about it. And I just hand him the card of this colonel, and he calls him. And it was hilarious conversation of, "Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Understand, sir. Yes, sir." Hangs up and just says, "All right, let's get your packet started."
Wow.
That was February of 2002. And I left May 8th of 2002 for basic training.
Wow, man.
So did basic training in Fort Sill, Oklahoma. Left Fort Sill, went to Fort Rucker for warrant officer candidate school, flight school. Did that. And, back then I was 20 at the time, 22, 23 years old. I was like, I'm young. This is the first time I've been away from home. I want to go to Korea. I just kind of want to get this out of the way. Back then for Apache pilots, they all went to Korea. That's where they sent them. So I volunteered to go to Korea. Got 1-6 Cav. They were Alpha model unit. I was Deltas. So they said, "You're going to go to Fort Hood, Texas. You're going to go through a unit training and fielding program. And then you're going to deploy with your aircraft back to Korea." Okay, cool. Sounds great. I'll get to see Texas. Go to Texas, go through the program. Congratulations, you guys, graduated. You're reflagged 4-4 aviation. You're going to Iraq. So they disbanded 1-6 Cav, turned us into 4-4 aviation, and sent us to Taji, Iraq. And that was one of 6 deployments that I did to the Middle East. Did 3 to Iraq, 3 to Afghanistan. In the middle of that, became a test pilot. I will correct Raf. Thanks for the shout out for the unicorn, but I actually never was a maintenance examiner. I was just a low pilot.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. Yeah, so, but they were trying to make you an ME, right? Like they were trying to DS. Yeah. Anyways, I remember that. But there's a lot of talk about
program
you
at the
being
time
an ME.
was not great.
Right.
So, I'm not really surprised because Raph never really shows up to work, so he don't really know who's who and what's going on. He just shows up, fixes his hair, wants to be your buddy, make everybody laugh, and then he leaves. So they're like, "Oh yeah, hey, Raph showed up to work today, but he didn't do anything." See, that's the warrant way. That's why they won't bring me in. That's why they won't. Anyway, go ahead, Smitty.
Frank will change too much stuff in the wolf pack.
He's not wrong. He's just jealous. But all accurate though, Mike. All accurate.
Yeah, did all that. So I was a test pilot, which the way that happened was it's not the route I wanted to go. My background was always with being a firefighter, EMT, hazmat tech, was safety. So I wanted to go the safety route. But back then, the height of the war, I was ordered by a full bird colonel to go to the test pilot course. I'm like, I don't want to go to the test pilot course. Tough shit, needs of the Army. So there were 4 of us, 2 Apache guys and 2 Black Hawk guys that were forced to go be test pilots. The 2 Black Hawk guys thought they would get one over on them. And when they went to the school, they show up, they had to do a 5 and 9 test. They wrote their name on it and handed it in. Didn't even fill it out. So they got kicked out of the course. Needless to say, their careers did not go the best route after that. But, I was forced into this. I'm not going to fail at it. So I just sucked it up and finished it and became a test pilot and did it to the best that I could do. And that was 2008, I think, May of 08. Did it for 14 years, I think. And then finally retired last June. Go ahead, Melon.
Yeah, Smitty. Great backstory, man, of a young guy looking at like police and then fire and then finding himself in the cockpit of an Apache in a combat zone, right? When was your first combat deployment and when was your last one?
First one was December 05 to December 06 to Taji, Iraq. My last one was October of 15 to May of 16 in Bagram, Afghanistan.
Yeah. Man, that's no joke. Thank you for what you've done. Six tours in just over 10 years, Rollo. That's an extraordinary amount of service and combat and chaos and all the rest of it, and the waiting around as well and the boring parts. Like, hats off to you, man. That's a lot of work.
Thank you.
Smitty, maybe for some of our non-military listeners or whatever, I'm sure everybody's heard of the Apache helicopter, but can you just just a real quick rundown of exactly its role? And, you guys are basically, Black Hawk pilots get jealous. I've noticed this. Like, Braf already gave the thumbs down, and it's just I don't understand it because I'm not in their community, but it's just like, dude, the Apache's pretty badass to me. But as a ground guy, but can you just describe like what do you guys carry, what your main role is, and like what you're capable of? Like, it's a massive responsibility to be able to fly an Apache and so much oversight and all the crap to it in order to fire that damn thing. But can you just give our listeners maybe a quick rundown?
Yeah, so I'm not gonna lie, and I am a little one-sided on the topic that it is the best helicopter in the inventory for its role. So I'll give Raph that. So each helicopter has a different role, but the Apache, when it does fly, because it's broken a lot, because it's an electronic nightmare, is essentially an Air Force. If there's any Air Force listeners, they're gonna hate me saying this and they're gonna argue, but it's close air support. That's the role. In the war on terror, it was back then all about close air support. The guys on the ground, that's who we work for. That's who we support and that's who we protected. Most of the time, we carry anywhere between 300 and 1,200 rounds of 30 millimeter, which for the listeners, a 30 millimeter round, I actually have one downstairs. It's essentially a grenade. It's got a frag radius of 4 meters. So it's essentially a grenade going down range. And then we carry 2.75-inch Hydra rockets and then the Hellfire missile, which has been upgraded throughout the years, as well as the rockets. Now a lot of the rockets have become laser guided. So it just makes them a lot easier to fire. But yeah, we just, back then we would take off on a mission and fly 8 hours would be a normal day of 8 hours in the air, going to the bathroom and Gatorade bottles in the cockpit, and just flying circles over a mission, over a set of ground dudes, waiting in a stack with, could have 5 different fixed wing aircraft above us, all operating on this with one controller.
There's as a ground guy, every time that we'd insert, we'd have the Apaches with us, which is a AWT, Attack Weapons Team. And they'd come in and be flying around usually for about 30 to 45 minutes prior. And then they'd go, bingo on fuel and have to return to base to refuel for when we go to extract. But there was no better feeling of like flying into a village and having AWT flying circles around us just as a show of force because of how much firepower. And it would literally just like everybody would cower and hide and we could have kind of free roam as long as they were in the air. Usually if anything happens, it's usually as soon as those guys fly away and they know what they're doing because they sit there and watch this for 20 years. But There's no better feeling than having that above you versus Raph up there like, hey, I got something to do. I got to run back to base with my, so something just came up.
Got to drop the mail off.
I just give Raph shit because he's got this God pilot complex, and we just got to hold him accountable.
So 20 years of armed, effectively helicopter gunship. If people, they've got a picture in their mind of an attack helicopter, it's a tandem seat, so the two crew are sitting one behind the other. Under the chin, there's the 30 mil cannon, and it has the short little wings with all the hard points carrying the Hellfires or rockets and so on. I'm sure everyone can picture it. Famously, it's the same one that Prince Harry flew. I'm sure everyone can picture him in the cockpit. And so that's just absolutely a key asset, as Smitty was saying, for close air support, that armed airborne gunship putting a lot of firepower down in support of the troops on the ground. And so you're flying that thing for pretty much 20 years, Smitty, is that right?
Yeah, came in 2002, went to flight school and flew the Bell 206 for flight school, and then went straight into that. And then went from the
great.
Delta model to the Echo model, which is what they got out now.
Yeah, right. And I'm sure there's lots of stuff that we probably couldn't talk about here. Are there any anecdotes or stories of your time flying the Apache that you could share, given our community, our listeners are predominantly veterans and first responders, so they're going to have a certain ability to listen in. And obviously, we're not talking about anything out of school, but are there any anecdotes that you could share about missions you're on or funny stories?
Really, definitely in JBAD Afghanistan. Sorry, I pulled a RAF on that one. We were essentially on call for a lot of these. So they went from just like early years in Iraq, we would automatically launch and fly for like an 8-hour window. And just we would it was called Cap Safe Skies in Baghdad. So we would essentially, whenever a heavy aircraft would come into Baghdad airport, we would set up in orbits on each side of the runway on its approach path and protect it while it landed. And that was the mission mainly in Iraq, along with working with ground guys when we get called off of that. But once we got up to Afghanistan, it just went to essentially an on-call. So you go out pre-flight and then get your helicopter ready, and then you would just sit around with the radio and just wait for a call. And the year in JBAD that I was there, it was busy. We always found ourselves running to the aircraft, and sitting in a chow hall, the radio would go off, and well, there goes your meal. You don't have time, so you would sprint a quarter mile to the aircraft, try to get all your flight gear on, and take off. One story I will tell, it was in JBAD that this happened. We were flying up the Kunar, escorting Jehoon, the Afghanistan Air Force helicopters. We're doing an air assault up extremely north, Barge Matal area, which is in the very northern of the Kunar Valley. And what they wanted us to do was, they always wanted us to shoot, but we can't always shoot unless we're getting shot at. So they would always falsely call in that they're getting shot at. So what they wanted us to do was they wanted us to fly in first, then them two behind us, and then my wingman behind them. And we would peel off so they would go in and land. Well, we did that. And I had a female lieutenant in my front seat, not my wife, another one. And we're flying in, we're getting pretty low, and you see an ISIS flag. There's an ISIS flag. Well, then all of a sudden you hear what sounds like someone threw rocks at a window, which everyone knows is gunfire hitting the aircraft. Well, yeah, we just took some rounds. She surprisingly was a lot calmer than I thought she'd be about it. Climbed up, all the systems were good. Didn't see where they impacted. Flew back, did a really extensive post flight. Didn't find a single bullet hole. Like, that's weird. Maybe we got lucky. But I know they hit something. But couldn't find a bullet hole. So we went back on call, got another call for a soft team just south of J-Bad, troops in contact. So we take off, go help them, come back, land. Now we're at the end of our shift. So I go to the back compartment to get my helmet bag out to put all my gear away, and it's shredded. It looked like someone took a knife to it. And I immediately thought the crew chief was playing a joke on me. So I get pissed. And then I found the bullet hole in my bag. So then I looked, and where the bullet hit, like a small little handle that is on a hinge in this compartment had flopped over top of the bullet hole and covered it. So that's why I never found it when I did the post-flight the first time. Well, then I started tracing the bullet hole. And it went straight up the tail of my aircraft. So then I climb up on top of the aircraft. I find the exit hole. And then I climb in the turtle back, and I look at my drive shaft. And I found the entrance hole, which is a small AK round entrance hole on the drive shaft. Well, that drive shaft spins at thousands of RPMs. Well, I rotated the drive shaft, and the hole on the back end was big enough to put your fist through. How the drive shaft did not come apart on the long flight down the Kunar, and then on the troops in contact afterwards, it was humbling. The lieutenant did not talk to me for a while after that. It affected her. And it affected me. Like, I just literally stopped and just stood there and just, thought, thank God. Thank God that drive shaft did not come apart. Because, I mean, we were putting the aircraft in, we were maneuvering the aircraft, all within limits, which you have to say, but extremely hard to where there's a lot of torque on that drive shaft. And for the amount of metal that was missing from it, we were extremely lucky. And that was definitely a humbling experience.
Yeah, that's the first thing I thought as soon as you said that. I was like, when you're unloading and loading that drive shaft, that's when I think it would snap, right? Because if it's a steady state, there's only so much force on it. But once you lower your thrust or your collective and then pick it back up again, that would literally cause it to shear off. That's fucking amazing.
Yeah,
that is amazing.
It's great. It's great.
Needless to say, I upped my post-flight game after that.
Man, no jokes, but it's crazy that you got back, and then it's even more insane that you then went and flew a combat mission in that state. Obviously a lot of luck, but also great design. Freaking hats off to the engineers who put these things together.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure it was going through the full envelope when you're in a combat mission. Full left and right of arc, up and down angle of attack, the whole thing, right?
Absolutely.
I think it's always, I don't know, man. I don't call it coincidence. I think maybe this is just how maybe life goes sometimes. Is we've all shared our stories on this podcast already about military service and close calls, and man, like, wow, man, that happened. And in the moment, it's kind of like whatever, but then, man, does it change how you start looking at things, with your life and what you're doing, that it's not all Hollywood and like, oh man, this is cool. And the outside looks at you like you're untouchable. And it's like, man, this guy's this awesome pilot or whatever he does, and his life must be so perfect, and have no worries. And he's got his life together and has no worries. And it's just like, man. And then it's always funny when God just is like, this is where I'm going to, jump on in, and then humble your ass a little bit and slow you down and make you think and start looking at things completely different. And, before I was going to ask like, oh man, hey, great intro, Smitty, very successful 20-year career, your warrant, lots of deployments, lots of good stuff, man. But then you started leading into it, and I was like, he's already going to talk about it, man. Here comes this humble moment where we all realize that we're just humans, at the end of the day, that, man, it could all go away just in a, the pull of the stick or a drive shaft or a bullet coming out of nowhere. You know what I mean? It all changed that quick. So it's nice to hear that side of it instead of, I'm a cool chopper jock, like Raph usually portrays on his, telling stories in Spanish on his go-kart at the airport to strangers. But yeah. But it's good to hear, man. I appreciate you sharing that.
Thank you.
So Brian, did that must have had an impact on you? You said obviously it changed the way you did your post-flight walk around and whatnot, and it impacted. You said it impacted you, and it impacted the female lieutenant who was flying with you. Is that something that you did find hard to deal with, or was that something you just processed and moved on because you obviously got a huge amount of combat experience and you're a well-experienced pilot? Is that something you're able to process, or is that something that did stay with you?
So, I mean, it's definitely one of the moments that I remembered throughout all my combat trips. But I just, when you're over there, you kind of have to process it really fast because, I mean, there's going to be another mission right behind it that you got to do. But I too, I'm a Christian. I do believe in God, and I took that as a sign that life is too short. You just don't know when your time's up. But there's nothing you can do about it. So just process it and all right, on to the next mission.
Yeah. There's a lot in that, right? About just extracting the beauty in the day, because you only have the day and we never know. And then if you have a habit of and a life of doing those things, your life becomes really great anyway. You invest in your relationships and you appreciate those moments. And if you have a habit of doing that, then your quality, the life you're living changes as well. So there can be some silver linings that can come out of this stuff. So after 20 years of service flying Apache helicopters in, 6 full combat tours, you then decide that Smitty's going to change tack and you're going to have a look at a post-military career. And, let us know what your thoughts were and how you prepared yourself to move into the next chapter and what that next chapter is.
So I knew I wanted to keep flying because that's one thing I do love is I love flying. And I'm sure Raph can attest to that. I know Melon can. Just even on your worst day, you're still in control of an aircraft that's not meant to fly, especially in helicopters. And you're making it fly, and it's peaceful. No matter what's going on, no matter how many people are on the radio, it's peaceful being up there. So I had a couple of jobs that I was looking at. One was a contracting job overseas. Several air ambulance jobs with different companies. And then I have a buddy, his name's Brian also. And I met him when I first got to Fort Hood, Texas back in 2004. And we just became best friends. And he's honestly kind of just like me, a little older, but always loved flying. So he'd done National Guard, active duty. He's currently in the National Guard and was flying for the same company I work for now, but he moved on to cargo fixed wing aircraft. So he, out of the blue, hit me up one day and goes, "Hey, there's a job opening at my company. I think you should put in for it." So, "What company? Who are you working for now?" And it was Survival Flight Air Ambulance, based out of Arkansas. And I'm like, I've never heard of them. Everyone's heard of the big Air Methods, Air Evac, Metro. So he kind of pestered me about it. And I'm like, well, we'll see. I don't know if that's what I want to do. And finally, he sent me the director of operations number and says, "Call him right now. He's expecting your call." I'm like, dude, I mean, I've still got 3 or 4 months left in the Army. I can't just start a new job right now. So I was like, you know what, screw it. So I took the leap. I did it. I made the call. This dude was just so down to earth. I mean, he's a current Army officer in the Guard, and he's director of operations for his company. And did an interview right there, and he's like, dude, you're hired. If you want the job. I'm like, thanks. Okay, I guess. I was like, you know what? Screw it. I don't have anything else like solid, so why not? I'll give it a shot. And it's one of the only companies that allows you to do 14 days on, 14 days off. Everyone else is 7 and 7. And the way my buddy explained it is like, all right, great, you got a week off, but you can't take a week's vacation with your family unless you have to take more time off from work. With 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off, you can go overseas for a week or longer and still have time to come back. I'm like, that makes perfect sense. One of the few things he's ever said that made sense. I was like, you know what? I'm going to do it. So I started it, and I absolutely love it. I sit around at a base. Our aircraft's hangared at the airport in Southeast Missouri. I drive down there. I work 14 days on, 12-hour shifts, and then come home. I'm on vacation for 2 weeks here.
And so, just so people can understand, air ambulance, helicopters. You know, I'm sure I've got an imaginary image of what you do at work. Can you describe like sort of what a typical day is and what that role is that you do now, Smitty?
Yeah, so I just got off days. I'm getting ready to go back on nights, and our shifts are usually about 6:45 to 6:45. So I'll show up at 6:45, do the handover with the guy that I work opposite of, and do all my paperwork. Go to that hangar, pre-flight the aircraft, come back, and I wait with an iPhone in this little office. You know, I'll study the Bell 407 flight manual sometimes, not all the time, and just sit there with a medic and a nurse. They've got their own little living area, and wait for the phone to ring. And it could either be a scene flight where you're landing at a cotton gin, a flight where you're landing on a road for a wreck, or a hospital to hospital transfer, where you'll go to a hospital in this area, pick a patient up, and fly them to a larger hospital.
So, quick question for you, Smitty. I didn't mind me jumping in there.
Go for it.
You pretty much were offered a quick transition from military to, you know, this new job and flown right over. Not really a gap, right?
Correct.
Have you ever taken some time and think about what if there was a gap? What would I have done? Would I be any different? And maybe would you question your purpose / significance at that point after 20 years of doing what you did?
So a lot of people have asked me, you know, with leaving the military, do you miss it? Do you miss it? I do miss some of it. I miss the camaraderie is the biggest thing, the friendships that you make and you build. But a great friend of mine who Raph and Melon all know is retired general, kind of said this one time when we were hanging out. It's like, you know, there's the path that the Army's on is not the path for me. And it's like, man, I guess I've always thought that, but it really sunk in. And he was right. You know, the route that the Army is going, it just, I wasn't having fun anymore. This is something I won't say a lot, is it was becoming too much like work. You know, we're getting a paycheck for it, but again, if flying is your passion, it's your love. It's not like work. You enjoy it. And the last couple of years, it was just, I was getting stressed out. My wife actually was probably the main reason I'm retired, because I asked her, I was like, you know, I could stay in. I don't have to get out. And she's like, absolutely not. You're miserable. You need to retire. So I'm like, yes, ma'am. Absolutely. And I never looked back. When my wife told me that, I was like, because if I'm miserable, she's miserable.
Yeah.
So, and I didn't want to put her through that anymore. So I was like, you know what, you're right. And now, you know, transition to, you know, left the job, which for the last few years is pretty much 9 to 5. I'm at the level that I was at Monday through Friday. And now I'm working, 14, 12-hour days in a row, with, 10 to 12 hours off for sleep. And that's it. But there's no stress. Like all of the stress is left. And I did think about taking a break. So like I retired May 31st and I started 1 June at this company. So it was summertime. We were in the midst of moving from Fort Campbell to Fort Leavenworth, so my wife could go to school. And I kind of thought about a break, but for Melon and Raph that know our lifestyle, that wasn't an option. We needed money, and it's not like we have bills or anything like that. It's nothing that bad. It's more of we like to live life. We like to travel. We like to eat at nice dinners on a whim. We just like to have fun, and we like to have fun with our friends. And so I looked at it as, yeah, I could work, go to work for 2 weeks, but then I'm going to have 2 weeks off. So it's pretty much like I get a 2-week vacation every month. And go ahead, Raph.
Sorry, you can finish your thought, but I was going to say, if, now that you've wrapped up the 20-year career and you're looking back, what advice would you give yourself starting this journey? Like, what are the things that you learned along the way that, you clearly learned going through them, not reading a book or not being told by anybody? But is there anything like you would look back, be like, hey, young man, before you come down this road,
Speaking of young man, there he is.
Sorry, he just did a jump right behind you. Procrastination.
Yeah, this is Soren, by the way, Smitty.
Yeah.
You never met him because he wasn't in the oven yet.
Yeah.
Say hi.
He's gotten big.
Yeah, he's 4. He turned 4 in November.
I think the podcast that I'm on, he's only 2. Only on like episode 30. Yeah, procrastination. I am probably the world's worst at putting off tomorrow what I could do today. And I'm trying to get better. And honestly, your podcast has kind of really made me look back at all the stuff that I've put off that I should have done, that has made it a lot harder when you wait to the last minute to do it. Another thing is I wish that I would have kind of been in church a lot more back when I was younger. And honestly, I'll tell you the reason I didn't, and this is maybe a selfish reason or not, but in Fort Hood, I don't know if any of you have ever been to Fort Hood, but in that area, it's things known as mega churches. And when you go to a church to, check it out, see if you like it, and they ask you for your LES, your pay stub, so they can tell you how much you're going to be donating to them, and the preacher's driving a Bentley, that's not the church for me.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, those churches exist, and I'm more of a small town, white church, wooden pews. Those churches have kind of gone away. They're just being overrun. But I do wish that I would have gotten into church a lot more when I was younger. I think that would have definitely helped me out. And my wife's actually pulled me back into church when we were at Fort Campbell. We started going every Sunday to another small church. We haven't found one here yet, but yeah, definitely the procrastination and get your butt back in the church and give thanks.
I think that's tough to talk about, man. And for some of the listeners, they're probably like, oh man, here we go. It's like, no, we don't talk about that. And it's just like, why would you say that? It's because you're uncomfortable, or that you're not prepared to deal with something and you don't know how to speak about it. Right. And I speak that from experience. I've been going to church now for, I don't know, a month and a half, 2 months straight, and really committing to it and making it part of my routine. But there's so much guidance there on life that like I just have no idea about, or that I still struggle with or think about. And, military aside, it's like, man, you 3 guys are all retired. I got almost 4 years left coming up here at the end of the month. And, you know, I sit here and listen to you guys, and you guys are a lot of my guidance, but at the same time, it's like, man, I still need to push myself and grow in other areas that maybe I don't get from you. So, and that's okay, but I need to be active and proactive and seeking out the next step. You know, life changes, I think, all the time. Like Smitty, you said it great. The Army's going in a direction that I don't think I'm a part of, or it's not appealing to me anymore. So I need to change my life. I need to make some new decisions. And, you know, there were things that led you down that way. And it's just like, for me, if I am going to do something, I don't want to just jump into it head first, not knowing a damn thing. You know, being in a dark cave with no flashlight, I want to go in with every tool that I think I need. And then I want to talk to the people that have been in the cave already and are coming out saying, hey, also bring this, this, and this, because, you know, you're going to be tested in there or something, you know? And like, that's such a better promising path, rewarding path. Makes me feel good, makes me want to wake up in the morning and pick people's brains more, find that experience, find that guidance. And it's become like a passion of mine. You know, that's what I get out of this podcast, at least. So I love that you said that, man. It's so important. And I think everybody will eventually hit that point in their life where they're like, man, my spiritual side maybe should have been better. You know, some people realize it at 18, 35, 92 when it's too late. But I think we all kind of arrive there at different times, and it's important to talk about. That's my point.
Yeah, totally agree.
Yeah, I think with this, just talking about what you said, Brian, I think my biggest fear, kind of with my spiritual side, at least, you know, trying to like have more of God's presence in my life. I think I had the fear, it sounds like, and I could be wrong, but what I'm picking up from you is similar to mine. Was I think I had the fear when I was younger of some like raising my own expectations. And I knew that if I went to church, if I actually sought this other lifestyle, then it kind of didn't give me much room to be a complete dirtbag. And I kind of enjoyed being a dirtbag in my 20s, which is, again, as a father at 45, it's not my proudest moment, but I feel like somehow I had to go through that path to really appreciate, you know, the purity of that my sons brought me, and like the purity that my marriage has brought me. And just to, you know, I don't know, man, it's been one of those things, but I do caution people to not let that stop you, because you think you're missing out, right? Like you think, well, you know, I kind of want to go to the bars and I kind of want to go just get crazy with my friends and stuff. But it doesn't mean that if you just block God out of your life, you can still do that. But it's just, you're running the risk of just going down a rabbit hole that you may never come out of, right? Like you start running with the wrong people, you start kind of, you know, not really having a constitution. It's like they say, if you don't have anything to stand up for, then you'll fall for anything, right? If you don't really have a real strong constitution, you could be a sucker to any fucking snake oil salesman that's around the corner. So anyways, but it sounds like your struggle is kind of similar to mine. And finally, it sounds like it's always a strong woman that ends up pulling, because Aubrey was the same thing to me, honestly. Like our running joke, and not running joke, but we talk about it, how, you know, when we first met, I wasn't necessarily a believer. And she basically took a leap of faith in me that I would eventually come around. And I talked on the show on some significant events that helped me come around. But I mean, again, just like you, I mean, for me, it was a damn near death experience. A couple, actually, where I was like, okay, life is short. I'm playing with fire. And if today was my day, I know sure as hell I'm not going to heaven. Like I knew that for a fact. Like there was no, well, there's a possibility. There was no, like my chair had been thrown out the window, and it was like, you're not coming here, dude. You know, like, so it was a stark realization. So I just tell people, like, I just, you know, spirituality is an individual thing, and I think you need to find it, but it definitely helps to be in a group of like-minded individuals to kind of strengthen each other, because it's a tough road, man. You know, we're human, we're fallible, we're always wanting to do stupid shit, and sometimes a quick meditative prayer or whatever might not be enough. It might be Smitty talking about something and being like, you know what, I'm not going to be a jerk today. I'm actually going to try to do the right thing, because my boy out in Kansas is trying to fight the good fight. Like, it just, the strength in numbers. There's like something really to that. And that's why church is kind of important, especially finding the right one.
Yeah. And also with what you said about like and you guys talk about it a lot I've heard it several times on your podcast, like the people you surround yourself with. And I mean, I gotta tell you, I think I've told Melon this before, but really it's him and Cherry, the main reason I'm married right now. I saw Kayla and Cherry and Kayla, and their relationship, I'm like, I knew that I had Kayla in my life and I was thankful for it. And I saw how great their relationship, Melon and Cherry's relationship is. Like, they're married, 2 beautiful kids, and they still go out and have fun. And just because you're married doesn't mean that, that you're stuck at home. And I think that, for me, always being a little immature that was just how I thought it. And it's like, I need to grow up. And I was with Melon in Saudi when I told him, I was like, I'm getting married. I'm going to ask her to marry me. Never told her that. We didn't go ring shopping. We didn't do any of that. We never discussed it until we landed in Australia on New Year's Eve.
Massive. Yeah. Thanks for the props, mate. I think you guys have an amazing relationship. I think it's funny because at the end of the day, the lucky ones, we find the one who's perfect for us, and it's like the person we are and the person we could be helps them, and the person that they are helps us achieve to become a better person, I mean, I remember you sitting at our house on the calls with Kayla in Saudi and, just working through all that, before deciding that she was the one. And, I was just so happy for you guys to be a part of being there when you proposed. It was beautiful. You did it at Sydney, right next to the bridge, right when the fireworks were going off on New Year's Eve. It was class, man. It was a great night.
But it's great to have someone in your life that calls you on your shit, that doesn't let you get away with, acting like a fool and doing stupid stuff. And it really, it makes you take a deep breath and you said it on one of your episodes, man, like what is it, sitting in a hall full of mirrors, just examining yourself. And like, hey, you're drinking too much, or you need to cut back on the drinking, or whatever it is in your life. But hey, you're getting lazy. Get your ass to the gym. Absolutely, stuff like that. But it takes a strong woman to do that, because believe me, I've dated women that would just let me do whatever I wanted to do, and it's just, there's no relationship there.
Yeah. It's different when you're with someone who is challenging you, and what you said, they're willing to call you on your shit. Like that's a level of love and strength that's very hard to find. And I would suggest that, the 3 of us who are married here, that's why we married these women. Like, there was something about these people, they had that combination of love but strength, where they were not going to put up with whatever. They wanted us to be better, and they could maybe see potential where we maybe weren't exhibiting too much potential. But then also in a like way, like we challenge them and you grow together, right? Like that's the best marriage, right? Like, it's never a sweet romantic novel story. There's rough patches, there's ups and downs, and it's when you're able to work through those things together, and it really takes something from each of you. They're the ones that are worth holding on to.
Absolutely.
I like that, we're talking about keeping a circle of friends and who's going to be there to like help you build and realize that there is more to life. In this case, there is more to life than just the military and all that stuff. And, if I'm being honest too, it's just like, I look at you guys and I see it's the little things. You guys do your hair. You still look clean. You dress nice occasionally. You're in shape. Like, you guys still go to the gym. You talk about all that stuff. And then it's just like, I actively look around and I take notice of other veterans. And, and I'm not sitting here knocking people's lifestyle, because, hey, if that's how you want to live, then that's your choice and you earned it. You served, and like, do what you want with your life. And if you're happy, you're happy. But, for myself, is like, I want to keep increasing my stock. and bettering myself and really pushing the limits on life. And when I look at a lot of veterans, man, it's like, as soon as you get out of the military, you know, you grow your beard because you want to revolt because you had to shave every day. You get your grunt style t-shirt issued to you. You got your long hair. Everybody gets tatted up. And then you wear your desert combat boots around and your jeans or your shorts to the gym. And you listen to the same shit. You do the same stuff. You talk about drinking and partying and how great the military was. And that's it. There's no progression. You know, they get together and shoot on the weekends. And then they're like, oh, man, I don't understand. Like, my life sucks. And this and that. It's just like, well, you're conforming to this veteran lifestyle that is what? Is it assumed that, like, hey, as soon as I'm out, I'm always just going to be this hard veteran and that's going to be my legacy, and like, oh man, I was always an infantry guy or this or that or whatever. It's just like, dude, there's so much more to life. Like, why is that your stopping point to just stop at, you know, some of these guys are 25 years old. They do 4 to 6 years in the military. They punch out and it's like, oh man, I was in Iraq, you know? So like, yeah, so are 1.3 other million people. And you still see some people pushing the boundaries. Like, it's a simple question. Which group do you want to be part of? You know, if you want to be mediocre and stay still and do your thing, then there's a group for that. If there are other people that are going to push you and try to become better in a lot of aspects, they're clearly there too. And me personally, I feel like I'm in that group. You know, I'm grateful for this group. So that's just what I see from my personal view a lot every day.
No, absolutely. You gotta take control of your own life. I mean, just because you left the job and moved to another job or didn't, and that's, I think, to answer your question earlier, that's why I didn't want to take a break. I knew Smitty would go overboard with the break. I would end up just laying on the couch doing nothing, you know, having a bourbon at 9 a.m, watching Top Gun or Top Gun 2, which just went off, by the way. Wearing my Army retired hat. And, you know, more so, I looked at my wife and how hard she works and how beautiful she is. And she's up at 4:30 going to the gym before school. When we go out, I don't want to look like a fat slob. I don't want to look like an embarrassment to my wife, who's changed my life. People need to take control of their own life, get off their couch, put the beer down, go to the gym, you know, and just set a goal, which is what we were talking about bringing up. Set a small goal and just accomplish that goal. And that could be what changes your life.
Well, and Brian, I mean, you're onto something. And I think people need to understand, if they don't, that working out isn't about aesthetics. Like, yes, it's part of it, especially if you're doing it right? If you're doing all the right, especially with nutrition. But fitness is more than just fucking looking good. If you feel at the top of your game, you are going to perform at the highest possible level that your DNA will allow you to do it. And that's why, if you're just a fat slob with, you know, with like man boobs or whatever, well, you're going to perform like a guy in a fat suit with man boobs. Like, I mean, again, you don't have to look like The Rock, but I bet you that The Rock wakes up and probably is firing on all cylinders because he's at the top of his physical DNA, you know, potential. And I think every person should kind of correlate. Fitness isn't about looks. Fitness is about performing in life. It's about performing everything, spiritually, mentally, physically. When you have the strength, when you have that fortitude, also by just lifting heavy shit, it gives you, like, you know, like if you deadlift twice your body weight, you know, call it the ego, call it whatever, there's a sense of accomplishment. Like, you're just like, holy fuck, I just picked up 350 pounds, you know, like that should be, like, my joints should come apart, but they didn't. So it's just, fitness isn't about fitness. It's not about, you know, wearing leotards and fucking, you know, being an influencer and showing your ass with a Pomeranian puppy. It's literally about feeling the best that you possibly can, so that you can be the best husband, so that you can be the best helicopter pilot, so that you can be the best father, so you can be the best friend, you know. That's what fitness is about. People should stop just wrapping that around, you know, fucking six packs and And because it has nothing to do with that. That's a
Right.
byproduct.
One of the things I think that Smitty's really encapsulated here is a bit of self-awareness and wisdom that after 20 years in the Army, great career and all that sort of stuff, he's aware of, being aware of your own shadow is a really key thing. And he knew that the best thing for Smitty was not to have like a month break or a couple of months, like stay busy, get out there, and creating goals in his life around getting that next career underway, that next chapter of his life. And he was talking about the goals don't need to be huge, they don't need to be career size. They can just be, a daily goal, a small thing for the day that you start stacking some wins up and you build some momentum in your life. We're probably at the end of, the amount of time we can hold people for. And Smitty, it's been great to get you on here and hear some of your backstory from a young man in Southwest Virginia and ambitions of becoming a policeman and then getting yourself into the fire department. I don't know how you got yourself into the Apache, but you got that colonel's name and the phone number on the back of it, and you never look back. And 6 combat tours later, you got yourself a wife. You're now flying air ambulance. You're saving people off the roads, as you said, or you're taking sick people to surgery and whatnot. So it's just an amazing life you're living. And I just want to take my hat off to you and what you've accomplished. Is there any final thoughts you wanted to leave the listeners with?
Not that I can think of. I mean, we kind of went the whole spectrum on the episode today. So I'm sure as soon as we get off, something will pop in my head.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, Smitty has recently started listening to all the backstory, the Not Your Average Operator, and he's working his way through it. He just reached out. He and I are good mates, and we talk about stuff all the time. And it's like, he just was like, this message or the topics we talk about has been making a difference in his life. And, so we just wanted to get him on. And, I'd like to say that there might be a chance to get him on for a further episode down the track, a bit of a round 2, perhaps. We can
absolutely
draw out some more lessons and some goals there. But Brian, thank you for your service. We always appreciated having you in our home. Like, you came and added something to our life. Like, you're a really fun guy to be around. We really look forward to the next time we get together with you. And thank you so much for coming on today.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks, man.
Okay, so for all the listeners, an amazing story here. And here's a guy who's stacking up some small wins, build some goals, get some momentum going in your life and see what you can do. So we'd love to hear from you guys about anything that you've taken away from this episode. And until next week, you take care.